Guys, so for this tutorial you are going to need 2 skeins of the Woolike yarn by Loops and Threads, and this yarn is available at Michael's. So what you're going to need to do is you're going to have to get both threads because we're going to be working with both skeins simultaneously. So now that we have both of our threads, see we're holding both of them at the same time, we're going to grab our G hook and get started with our chain. So this is done in multiples of 3 plus 2, so make it as long as you want, so long as it is in multiples of 3. So 3, 6, 9, etc. until you reach the length that you want, and then crochet 2 additional stitches at the end of it. So now that we've reached the length that we want, we are going to start our next row. So we need to chain 2, and we are going to double crochet in every stitch for this entire row. So there is our first double crochet. Now we are going to yarn over, insert our hook, pull through, yarn over, pull through. Do it again in every single one of the stitches for this row. So here we've done a couple of stitches and you can see what that's going to start to look like. It's going to create a really nice little edge for our scarf. And this is also going to be the beginning of our pattern, which you will see here shortly, and we're going to just repeat that throughout. So let's go ahead and keep double crocheting. Great, so now that we have finished this row, we're going to move on to the next one. So what you're going to do is just chain 1. We're going to turn over our work, and this whole next row is going to be a row of single crochets. So we're going to make a single crochet on this very first stitch right here. And we're just going to keep going throughout the entire length of the scarf. So what's nice about this pattern is that it is a really easy pattern to follow along, and it just makes your scarf look like it was a super complicated pattern that took you ages to make, but really you can just pump it out in just a couple of hours on a weekend. So here we have finished off this row and we're moving on to the second one. So we're going to chain 2 and turn our work over, and then this is going to be the row where we're going to do that fancy crossover puff stitch. So to do that, we're going to double crochet in the first stitch, and there you go, and we're going to skip the next stitch. See, there's the next stitch, go to the one after that and double crochet in that stitch. And we are, there we go, going to double crochet in the stitch after that. So then the stitch after this one is where we do our fancy crossover puff. So we're going to go to that skipped stitch right there, and you're going to yarn over, insert your hook into that skipped stitch, yarn over, there we go, there we go, and then we're going to pull some yarn, yarn over, and grab some more yarn, and close out our stitch by yarning over and pulling through. Then a chain after that. Now we're going to repeat it again, so we're going to skip a stitch, and the one after that we are going to double crochet. So it's 1 double crochet and the second double crochet. We're going to go back to our skipped stitch after this and do that crossover puff stitch. So yarn over, insert hook, pull yarn, yarn over, insert hook, pull yarn. Oh no. Alright, and then we close out our stitch. Go through all of them, and then chain 1. So if you still didn't quite get what to do, here's a super slow-mo version of what we're doing in that skipped stitch. So we are yarning over, inserting our hook into the skipped stitch. Go ahead, grab some yarn and pull through, yarn over, go back into that skipped stitch, and then grab some yarn a second time. Don't get caught though. There we go. And there are all of your loops, and you're going to close out that stitch. There you go, yarn over, and you're going to pull through all of the loops on your hook. There we go. Great. If you don't get stuck. There we go. And chain 1 to finish. Yay! Alright, so you're going to keep working the same pattern throughout this entire row. So it's going to be skip a stitch and then double crochet on the stitch after that, do a second double crochet in the stitch after that one, the third stitch would be, and then go back to that skip stitch and do your fancy little crossover poof stitch. So I'm going to go ahead and continue working this row, and I will see you when I'm at the end of the row. Great, so now I've reached the end of my row, and as you can see they look so pretty. They're all poofed. But I didn't quite count right. So instead of adding the +2, I ended up doing another multiple of 3. So you can see there that I've got an extra stitch at the end of the row. If you would have done your multiples of 3 and actually counted +2 at the end instead of 3, you would have finished with just a double crochet, but as I didn't, I'm gonna have to finish this off with 2 double crochets. And hold on, there's the second one, yay! And that way I can finish off this row. So now we are gonna move on to the next and final row of this pattern. So you're gonna chain 1, and this whole row is going to consist of single crochets. So you're gonna insert your hook, yarn over, and pull through. You're gonna do that for the entire row, and you're gonna be going into that gap over here. See, instead of the stitch, we went through the gap. So you're gonna go in through the 2 stitches left behind in the little puff. So that's 1 stitch there. Also just a single crochet. And the second one, single crochet. I gotta fix my camera here. And like we did on the last gap, you're gonna go ahead and just do a single crochet in that gap here. Let me show you. Not in the stitch, but the gap. That way it'll clean up the pattern a little bit more, and you'll be able to see the little puff stitches a little bit better, and it'll just be cleaner overall. So we're gonna go ahead and do this for the entire row, and I will see you again when I get to the end of the row. So I've reached the end of the row, and you can see I've just got one little last poof stitch to go. So we will single crochet into the 2 stitches, the poof stitch. And here we go, we're gonna do that little gap right there, 1 single crochet. And then the very last one at the end right there, see that last little stitch. Don't forget that last little stitch, because you'll be able to see it once you finish the scarf. It's gonna have like a bit of a hole there. It's gonna look kind of funny. So let's finish that off. And we're gonna go to the next row. We're gonna chain 2, and this is just gonna be a repeat now from what we have done before. So we're gonna go back to double crochet. So a double crochet into that first stitch, and it's an entire row of double crochets. So now we are going to make another row of single crochets after we finished our double crochet row. So we're gonna chain 1, turn our work around, and we are just gonna insert our hook, yarn over, and pull through. We're gonna do this for this entire row. So as you can see, this pattern is not a very complicated pattern. You can just kind of keep going. Instead of just making a scarf, you can make an entire blanket with this pattern. It would look really nice. At least I hope it does. I'm going to start working on a blanket here soon. I just love the way the scarf looked. So I think a blanket would look really, really pretty. So here, let me show you what we've got going so far, so you can kind of get an idea of what it's going to look like. So we've got our first row, which is our double crochet row, and then we have a single crochet row, and then our puff stitch row. This looks so nice. And then you finish that off with a single crochet row, and then you're going to repeat that. So it's going to be double crochet, single crochet, puff stitch, single crochet, and you do that for as long as, or as wide as you want your scarf, really. So here's my completed scarf. I did 5 rows of this pattern, and then I went through and just added a button and some tassels after that. But there you have it. That's it. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. If you have any comments, any questions or anything, just leave them in the comments, and thank you for watching.